Good evening. We're back with another episode of the Lord of the Rings LCG Progression Series. And tonight is a card review of the Dungeons of Cirith Gurat Adventure Pack. So let's take a look. The hero for this adventure pack is Folco Boffin. A Hobbit, 7 threat, 2202. Folco gets -1 threat cost for each Hobbit hero you control. So he's at a maximum 6, potentially 4 threat, which would be the lowest in the game. Action, discard Folco to reduce your threat by 7 once per game. Okay, well, his stats aren't very good, and he's very weak health-wise. So he's going to need Bill the Pony. But the threat, 4 threat in a Hobbit deck, that's ridiculously low. You could play him and Sam and Merry or Pippin, and you'd be at 18, which would give you a couple of turns of secrecy, even without any threat reduction. But is that much better than another Hobbit who gives you starting threat cost of 20? Like if you play 3 Hobbits, typically Merry, Pippin, and Sam, you'd be at 20. Folco would lower that, but is that a lot better? It's a little better. I don't know if it's enough to make up for his weak stats. So threat is low starting threat is a very good defensive measure because it limits the number of enemies that you'll take on at once, and it allows you to engage enemies at your convenience or not at all. However, this low threat is compensated for in this card with 0 shields. So the defensive ability of Folco is the low threat and nothing else. The action, discard him to reduce your threat by 7. Well, 7's a lot, but not getting a resource or his stats for the rest of the game is a big deal. Without a card that specifically takes advantage of discarding him, I'm not inclined to say this is very good. Caldara, I said the same thing about when I initially reviewed it, and then eventually a deck came around that made her good when you use Prince Imrahil to replace her. You could do something similar with Folco. I don't really see a reason to, though. Caldara allows you to play high-cost allies for free. Folco doesn't do that. It's just a threat reduction of 7, which is worth roughly 3 cost and 1 card. That's how much Galadrim's Greeting would cost, and that's 6 threat reduction. So that's not that valuable for losing a hero. I think this hero is probably for a fun deck. I don't think he's very strong. I don't think we're going to see him in the best decks in the game for the hardest quests, unless there's some combo that I'm not seeing. But I think this is likely a fun hero for a fun deck. Knight of Dale. He could fulfill a specific role where you really want access to lore and you really need very low threat, but that's about it. Knight of Dale. So we're developing Dale a little bit. 4 cost, 2213. Spend 1 lore resource to ready Knight of Dale once per round. Valor action, ready Knight of Dale once per round. So when you're over 40, can you use both those actions in 1 round? The Valor action of readying him for free and the lore action, or the spend 1 lore resource action? Well, his stats aren't good. However, if you can quest with him and attack with him in the same turn for 2 each time for free when you're over 40, that's not bad. It's not bad, but it's nothing exceptional either. If you can quest with him and attack with him twice, or attack and defend with him for 1. So the 1 lore resource to ready him is a high cost for that effect. Typically for a extra action advantage, we would consider it good if you spent 2 resources on it 1 time. That would be very strong. With Knight of Dale, the effect is only really good if you have a lot of extra resources and nothing really to spend them on. Otherwise, you'd rather spend the resources to get permanent effects into play. But if you're over 40s, and you can do both actions, which I'm not 100% sure about, the Valor action and the action, that could be good, although I have a feeling if they're developing Dale, there might be some more Dale synergy coming, so we would need to withhold judgment on Knight of Dale until seeing everything that's coming. But for now, I find this card almost good. I find its effect expensive, and therefore a late game only effect, but in the late game he's quite good. I don't think he's very good early game, but in the late game I think he's worth playing. But I don't know that you would, even given that he's not bad in the late game, I don't know that you would necessarily automatically include him in a deck that you expected to get to the late game pretty often without further Dale synergies. So we'll withhold judgment until we see what Dale synergies might be coming. But for now, I'll say he's acceptable in a deck that you can expect will be over 40 threat at some point. And acceptable in a deck that's going to have a lot of extra lore resources, or a lot of resource generation in general, because his upfront cost is quite high. And a deck that has the early game covered. Interesting card. Diligent Noble, 1 cost, attached to a hero, limit 1 per hero. Attached hero gains the Noble trait. Okay, so this is the latest in a list of cards that are placeholders and or grant a title that you might need to make use of for a combo, and everything I've said about the previous cards applies to this one. It's useful if you absolutely have to have the Noble trait for something else, and you don't want to play a Noble hero. This is a placeholder which will draw a card, and for 1 resource it enables a combo. We've seen that for the other traits, and we'll likely continue to see it until all the traits have a version of this card that can grant the trait and draw a card. Rittermark Knight, 2 cost, 0/2/0/2. After Rittermark Knight is declared as an attacker, it gets +2 attack for this attack, and at the end of this attack, discard Rittermark Knight. So it's a battle version of the Escort from Edoras. So we would consider this a one-time effect with a +2. So it gives 4 attack for its 2 cost. It's not bad. To consider it good, we want more than that. I mentioned in my attachments and events video that +2 is what you're looking for a non-permanent effect, and this gives you that. And it also has Rohan synergy with cards that discard, that proc when you discard a Rohan card. I don't think this is so good that it makes the Rohan deck top tier. So good that it makes something top tier would be, an example of that would be something like Vilya or Steward of Gondor. But this is a good card, and I'd include it in a Rohan deck. The same as I would Escort from Edoras. That's its function. I don't think I would necessarily include it in other decks, though I might consider it if I really needed attack power or one-time use attack power, which I don't generally put a high priority on, but if I did need it, I would consider this card. So far, there's nothing exceptional in this adventure pack, though I hope that Dale will be developed in the future, and Knight of Dale might be something that's needed for that. But let's keep going. Fierce Defense, 3 cost, deal 3 damage to a non-unique enemy engaged with you. Valor action, discard a non-unique enemy engaged with you. Well, as far as non-permanent effects go, this could be very strong. You could discard, for example, a troll with like 9 HP if you were over 4 threat. Not over 4 threat, over 40 threat. So that could be good in that circumstance. 3 cost is pretty expensive though. Tactics has resource generation problems, and I don't know that you would include this and other high cost tactics cards in a deck that's not designed for Steward of Gondor to go on tactics on a tactics hero, because you just wouldn't get the chance to play them all. This might be good though for a specific challenge, such as killing a hill troll or killing a really nasty non-unique enemy. So we'll keep this card in mind. It's one of the better non-permanent effects as far as combat goes, but it is expensive and therefore slow and not very good in the early game, and not very good in the early game is usually not good for solo play unless it's really, really good in the late game. And this is pretty high value. It can be. It won't always be. You need it out at the same time as the non-unique enemy that's engaged with you. You can kill it before it gets a chance to attack. That is an important point. So against certain encounter decks, this could be very good. Could be very good. Has potential. But it is not easy to set up its ideal use. You have to be over 40. You have to have the 3 resources for tactics, and the enemy has to come out while those conditions are met. So it's going to sit in your hand for a while, waiting until you can set up its best case scenario. A slow card, and slow cards are usually bad in solo, but not always. This has potential to deal with specific challenges, especially some that could be coming in nightmare decks. Irigian Survivor. 2 cost, 1/1/1, 3 health. While you have no cards in your hand, Irigian Survivor gets +1/+1/+1. Well, it's not bad in that scenario. It's Noldor, so it has Noldor synergy. But no cards in your hand is not a very common situation. I guess that's for like an Aristor deck where you're playing your cards every round. There are other Noldor cards that you're going to be playing first though, because they're better more of the time, or more often. So I find this card likely overshadowed by other cards, and not good enough to justify the rareness of it. The rareness of its best case use. So I find it a little underwhelming, as is the case for every card this adventure pack so far, except possibly Knight of Dale. We'll see. Heirs of Erendil. Play only at 1 cost. Play only if you control a unique character with the Noldor trait and another one with the Dunedain trait. So far, all these team-up cards have been fun cards, but let's see. Choose a non-unique location in the staging area, and raise your threat by X to discard it. X is the chosen location's printed quest points. Well, that could be quite good for some nasty locations that are in the nightmare decks. You don't have to deal with any forced effect that happens when you make it active. You don't have to deal with travel costs. And you don't have to deal with effects that happen when it leaves play as an explored location. So if you're playing a deck with threat reduction, and you've got Noldor and Dunedain, this could be good. This could be worth a look for sure. Is it strong enough to make the team up worth it? It could be to defeat a certain specific challenge. If you're not trying to build a 1 deck or something, even if you are, this could be. Now, you probably want heroes with the Noldor and Dunedain traits. right? Because that makes this effect most reliable, and you can rely on it since you're starting with those characters. Off the top of my head, there's not a lot of really strong Dunedain heroes, so that's the biggest problem. There's really strong Noldor ones, but not a lot of Dunedain heroes that see play in really strong decks. So that's the biggest problem, but if you are running one, this effect is quite powerful, and I probably would use it unless you're starting at really high threat, or you're not running threat reduction. In that case, you probably wouldn't want to use this on like a 5 threat or something location. But it could be made to work, and work pretty well, especially for some challenges. For like a quest with a 1 progress location that's pretty nasty. Leaf Lock, 3 quest, 0/2/2, 3 health, it's an Ent. So it enters play exhausted. Leaf Lock gets +1 willpower for each damaged Ent character you control. Limit 4 willpower. Well, it's bad early if you need questing. It's okay if you need battling or defending or attacking. There are Ent decks where you typically do have a lot of damaged characters because they deal damage to themselves on purpose. Treebeard does that. Durndingle Warrior. I think there's another. So if you get it set up, this could be quite strong. But you've already got an Ent that gives you 3 willpower for 3 cost for no setup required. That's Welling Hall Preserver. I think you'd add Leaf Lock in to an Ent deck. At the moment, that deck is not bad. I played it a little bit in the Sands of Harad expansion. It's not bad. It's not elite though, the limitation being the enters play exhausted thing. But the theme of this expansion pack, or this adventure pack, I mean, so far is fun cards. Nothing especially strong. We've got Folco, which is a fun card. Dale, at this point in the game at least, is a fun deck, but not a good one. Rohan is fun, but not especially strong. Fierce Defense is probably the best card in the adventure pack so far. And Noldor is good, but this card doesn't make it any better. And then the team-up decks are fun, and Ents are good, but not exceptional. So far, I see the theme of this adventure pack as a fun adventure pack. Which is fine. Not every player is playing this game for the same reason. Some players are only playing fun thematic decks, and if a quest can't be beaten with a fun thematic deck, then it gets stuck in the binder and never looked at again. And that's great. But my style of play is to try to beat the best quests in the game. And that is the focus of my reviews typically. So the last 2 cards, Legacy Blade, 0 cost, attached to a hero, restricted. Attached hero gets +1 attack for each side quest in the victory display. Limit +3. Well, if you're playing a side quest deck that's, for example, designed to complete a side quest on turn 1, this would be 0 cost for 1 attack, and that's pretty good. And if later in the game it buffs to +2, then that's a good attachment. However, it's not going to be +2 until late in the game, and so this card in the early game, in decks that aren't designed for it, it may not do anything at all. Like if you're not playing a deck that gets a side quest out on turn 1 and you have this card in your opening hand, you're pretty sad because it does nothing. But later in the game it could be good. So this is a late game card primarily, at least mid to late game. And mid to late game cards are not great in solo decks, which need to be strong early, at least against the hardest quests. The side quest deck I tried out a little bit, and while some of the side quests are very strong and are going to see play in the hardest decks in the game, the deck which guarantees that a side quest will be out early with Thurindir is not elite in my view. It's good, but not elite, and I think I've said that about like every card in this adventure pack, that the deck it goes in is good but not elite. That would be the mantra for this adventure pack: good but not elite. Fun but not elite. Open the Armory, 1-cost neutral card. Search the top 10 cards of your deck for a weapon or armor attachment and add it to your hand. Valor, search the top 5 cards of your deck for a weapon or armor attachment and put it into play. So I don't think you get to do both, right? You do one until the Valor action. I'm going to have to look that up. So this card is good for helping to set up important combos concerning weapons or armor. Concerning Valor actions, I looked it up and discovered that the Valor action takes place of the regular action, so that does affect Knight of Dale. Even with the Valor action, it's just a good card but not a great one. Without it, it's a little lackluster, and that seems true for all the Valor cards. For this one, the regular action is still okay. You don't get the cost reduction, but it's still okay for helping set up a combo, such as with Fastrid and Aomer or something like that, where you really need weapons quickly to get it rolling. Or an armor attachment potentially, like with Baragond and Gondorian Shield or something like that. This could be a good card. It's not a great card. Those situations I described, I don't know if you would use it with Baragond. I think it needs to be more urgent than that to play this card. Because it basically does nothing except add 1 to the cost of the weapon or armor attachment. There's no guarantee you'll get the one that you want. But I do think it makes sense in a deck where you are needing weapons to target the staging area. And such decks can be used to defeat specific challenges, and they're fun to play, but they're not particularly good for the nth time in this adventure pack. That is definitely the theme of the adventure pack: fun cards that support fun decks that aren't elite but are fun to play. So that's who I would recommend this adventure pack for. If you are a thematic player, you're probably going to find something to like here. Whether it's Hobbits, Dale, Rohan, Ents, Noldor, there's something for everybody. If you're a fun thematic player, and if you're a player like me, min-maxer, who's just trying to beat all the hardest quests in the game, and this is a very, very, very hard game. I've been ranked as high as 168 in North America in Hearthstone. And I played Star Wars CCG at a very high level when I was in high school. And this, in my opinion, is a very, very difficult game at times when you're playing true solo. And so if your objective is to beat all the hardest quests in the game in true solo, like mine is, you can ignore this adventure pack. I don't see anything here that you need to get. But for thematic players or players who have already beat everything and now are playing thematically, there's some things to like here. Whether you'll consider there to be enough things to justify buying the adventure pack, I don't know. But there's some things to like here for thematic players, just not anything especially powerful. So thank you for watching.